Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. Okay. So I'm kind of excited about today's Q&A. The question is going to sound a lot like a lot like the questions I typically get, and but it's going to lead us somewhere that I've been wanting to go for a while, because we're going to be able to talk about some programming stuff that probably doesn't get discussed enough, because we sort of have this why and how question that's going to come up, and so I'm going to dive right into it. Oh, by the way, I got some visual aids here, and then at one point in time, I'll probably ask you to take a screen capture, because I had to draw a picture, and I'll hold it up for the camera. I don't have my whiteboard here, obviously, because I'm at the home office, but I'll give you a heads up on that. Question comes from Jimmy. And Jimmy says, I was wondering if you could go into a bit more detail about wide ISAs. So right away, it sounds like a typical question that I get. That shows a swayback posture, posterior tilt. Where would you start with someone like this? So this is an extreme case, and it's going to give us an opportunity to show how to move somebody out of this and recapture a lot of that full excursion of breathing and movement. Because this is really an extreme case. This is somebody that is sort of at the end game of the superficial compensatory strategies that I talk about. And so let's create that representation first. I'm going to grab the pelvis, as I usually do. So if I have a wide ISA and I have limited excursion of breathing, that means that my ISA and my IPA are going to match. So I'm going to have an exhaled position of the pelvis. So the IPA is going to be wide. Now, to get to the position that Jimmy's asking about, under most circumstances, your wide ISA, wide IPA is going to have this nutated sacrum, and so I'm going to have this space posteriorly. So this allows me to be a good hinger, not a great squatter, and I can produce high levels of force. I use a lot of high pressure strategies, and again, so I'm going to typically have this orientation. What Jimmy's describing, though, requires that I have this final compressive strategy where I'm actually going to bend the sacrum down. So I'm going to compress this area. And under most of these circumstances, I'm going to lose both internal and external rotations. And so again, that's just layers of superficial compressive strategies on top of the normal archetype that's going to result in that. So I'm going to lose ERs and IRs. So I have very limited excursions available to me to use for activities before I would hit another compensatory strategy. So if I was to take somebody with this posterior compression that Jimmy's asking about, they won't even have 90 degrees of hip flexion available to me unless they want to compensate. So right away, I've taken a number of exercises off the table, so to speak, because I can't move them into this position because they just don't have the capacity to do so. But while it is a limiting factor, it also points my programming into a very, very specific direction. And so I'm going to hold up my little graphic here that I drew out for the camera. I have two cameras, by the way, so I'm just going to hold it up there until I see it get visualized. So there, it's clear in the little camera, and then there's the one for the big camera. So what I want you to do is to go ahead and take a screen capture of that, and again, so you have a representation. So you see the blue square in the middle is any direction that we want to go, but with limited excursion. And then you're going to see the red rectangle is where we're going to try to expand movement first and foremost. Okay, so when I have a wide ISA and I have this compressive strategy all the way up and down, for me to try to force a turn under those circumstances is very, very difficult to do. They have limited hip flexion, they have limited hip abduction, they have limited hip extension, and then all their traditional ERs and IR measurements are going to be limited. So I have to stay within this small square of movement. So instead of a split stance type of an activity, I'm going to use a staggered stance. So my feet would be just offset, and then I'm going to drive a number of different reaching patterns or pressing patterns, but I have to use angles that are below shoulder level. So let me give you a for instance on this. So we would have a staggered stance, high to low cable press, which would keep the pressing motion below shoulder level, and I'm just offsetting the feet. And so I'm going to gradually move into these turns, because again, if I try to go too far into a turn, all I'm going to do is create this massive orientation of the whole system, which is not really a turn. It's just changing what direction that I'm facing. And I want to create the ability to actually turn and rotate. So I got my water balloon, so another visual aid today. And so I have somebody that's compressed anterior to posterior. So this is looking down on somebody, and so they're compressed. So if I try to turn them too far, all I do is get this. And that's not really a turn. That's just a reorientation of the entire system. What I want to try to do is I want to try to create compression on one side, expansion on the other side. And if I can do that with my activities, that's going to actually start to restore my ability to create turns in these people and start to restore the rotations. And so if you go back to the red rectangle, those are going to be activities where I'm going to start to deviate from center outward to the sides. So I'm going to start with lateral stepping. So consider if I was doing conditioning with somebody like this, we'd be doing sideways sled drags, or I'd be doing suitcase carries, because what those activities do is they could create compression on one side, expansion on the other, compression on one side, expansion on the other. And this is how I'm going to start to improve the excursions and restore their ability to turn, because once again, if I try to force this, all I'm going to do is get compensatory strategies. So staggered stances, pressing and pulling below shoulder level, lateral movements. So this is where your side lunges, your side split squats, your low step ups come into play, because that's what these people need, because they only have a limited excursion in their peripheral joints. And so we have to take advantage of what they do have and then slowly progress them out of that. So Jimmy, this is such a great question. If you're in the rehab side of things, these are the people that you're going to want to put into side lying, because we take advantage of gravity. So if I put you on your side and you're compressed A to P, what happens is, and you can see on my balloon, so I get all the guts falling down towards the bottom, and so that creates expansion on one side and compression on the other. So sideline becomes very important. I start to build people up from sideline. So now we're talking about immature oblique sits, mature oblique sits. This would be something that you would progress eventually into side planks and such if we're talking about moving into gym activities. So right away you should start to be thinking about how you're going to be able to write this program for somebody like this. It's not difficult to write the program. What is difficult is identifying the representation of what you're looking at first and foremost. And then the program kind of just writes itself, because when you understand the needs of this individual, again, it becomes very, very, very easy to write. So hopefully that gives you some guidance, Jimmy. If I didn't answer your question sufficiently, then please do so. Oh, by the way, the asymmetrical ISA element of this, no different than anything else. You just have two different representations. So you have a shape change on one side that is opposed to the other. You're going to follow the same rules that we just talked about. One side's going to be able to go a little bit more anterior, posterior. One side's going to have to go a little bit more side to side, but the rule still applies. So again, hopefully that answers your question. Everybody have a great Tuesday. I'm going to finish my coffee. Today's a big, long walk, so I'm looking forward to that. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.